Hey everybody, Livingston here. Today we're jumping into another fun-filled episode of the Twilight Zone. This time it's episode 17, The Odyssey of Flight number 33, came out February 23rd, 1961, and another one I haven't seen before. So before we get into it, let's jump into the comments section and see what you had to say about last week's episode. Richard Chase 2960 says, this one's my favorite videotaped episode, which this is number 22, that's the name of the episode. Pretty decent episode. It's one of my favorite ones of this season so far. It's actually where they got Final Destination, the story outline basically from, and I gotta say it probably was the best of the 6 videotaped episodes that they've done in this season, but I'm not a big fan of the videotaped episodes just by how they look. They just didn't look too great compared to the film, so I'm glad this is like the last one before they jump back into the film. Kathy Holton says, it's no secret that the original installment of Final Destination was influenced by this episode of The Twilight Zone. You Drive inspired the movie/book Christine, and Little Girl Lost inspired the movie Poltergeist, which I don't think we've gotten to Little Girl Lost yet, so that's one I want to look forward to if that's actually where they got the Poltergeist story from. Enrique Minnow 9963 says, Dr. Smith from Lost in Space makes his appearance. Yep, and we actually mentioned that too. I think he kind of overplayed his role a little bit, actually thinking back on it now. He was just kind of, I don't know, sinister in that role, unless that's the way the director wanted it. But, I enjoyed his performance nonetheless. Enrique also says the nurse and flight attendant is Arlene Martell, who played as below mentioned in Outer Limits Demon with a Glass Hand, the best sci-fi episode in history. Also starred in the best Star Trek, the original episode Amok Time, who was also supposed to marry Spock, instead gets Kirk and Spock to fight each other. And I haven't watched all of the original Star Trek show. I've seen key episodes here and there, but I haven't seen the majority of the show, much like sci-fi, so it might be something I need to jump into at some point in the future. Ben Rosita says, went and checked. The doctor in this one is Dr. Smith from Lost in Space. Anyway, this isn't one of my top favorites, but I was legit scared by that woman when I was a kid. And what also scared me is the music that played when the plane explodes. Yeah, it was a pretty dark moment indeed. I mean, I knew it was coming just because when it happened and you seen that she was actually viewing her death in the dream, almost like it was giving you hints and subtle things here and there saying, you're going to die if you get on that plane. And she understood and didn't get on, much like Final Destination. But yeah, definitely an interesting episode for sure. And the music was pretty bad in that, not bad as in it was actually decent in that scene that he's talking about with the plane exploding. Charles Stewart 8009 says, thanks for reading my comment. You should have a lot more followers. Keep it up and you will. Thanks, Charles. I'm actually going to be doing a Outer Limits episode. People have been actually bringing up Outer Limits quite a bit on this channel, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to start doing it. I've been doing a lot of extracurricular activities here and there lately, so it's hard for me to sit down and do a movie every Sunday, but I can definitely do an episode of The Outer Limits, which I'm going to do next Sunday, so check that out when I do have that up. Rick Kinnett 143 says, Arlene Martell also starred in one of the best episodes of The Outer Limits, Demon with a Glass Hand. Hope you do a commentary on the series too at some stage. And I just mentioned it actually, Rick, so I look for that next Sunday. I will be doing an Outer Limits episode. So, and I don't think I've seen any of the original Outer Limits. I've seen some of the newer ones from the 90s, but not too many from the 60s. Robert Jewell 9727 says, of the videotaped episodes of Twilight Zone, this one is my favorite. It gives Liz's character an in-the-moment realness, whether she's being gawked at in the hospital bed by her manager or doctor, who see her as a sexual object, or in her dreams as someone being lured to the morgue by a faceless nurse or sinister female caretaker with an eerie sense of judgment over her, who also see her as merely a body to be done away with. The psychology of it is succinctly perfect. So yeah, I mean, that was a lot there. I'm going to try to break that down a little bit, but yeah, they did kind of view Liz as just a person who, like, she was a stripper. That's what her agent called her, but she's a dancer. She didn't do the stripping, and I guess she just looked at herself more classy compared to what the men saw her as, laying in that bed. And yeah, they didn't treat her decently. They treated her more like an object, more than a actual patient in the hospital, and they kind of talked down to her, which was kind of sad to see. But lo and behold, she was proven right in the end, so that's what matters. Griffin Wing 420 says, definitely a creepy episode. The ending is shocking but predictable. Glad I found your channel while you still reviewing the awesome series. Yeah, welcome aboard. I appreciate you sending in a comment. We love comments on this channel, so I appreciate it when anybody does come in and comment and talk about the episode that we watched prior. And yeah, it's actually become a lot more interesting to do these videos now that I've kind of brought in the comments section, and I get to talk to you and you get to talk to me, and we kind of talk about the episode all together. So thanks for joining us and welcome to the channel. P Sparks 3419 says, you mentioned the episode looked somewhat grainy. Isn't it much more difficult to remaster old videotape if it has imperfections? I'm not sure if there is a difference in redoing footage. I mean, if they have the original videotape, it's probably not as easy compared to doing film, just because film is just more abundant. So I'm sure they had more of a process to do film, transferring it over to better quality. But I don't know how they do that when in terms of videotape. Do they just take the actual old footage that you can get from a digital file and maybe manipulate it and make it better? But yeah, I mean, I just noticed in this one, it wasn't as nice as the other episodes in terms of HD quality. Ghost Daddy 87 says, sup, been a while for me. Sup. Not much, my friend, just living. California Hummus says, this one is unsettling because we've all had the waking dream. Interesting to see a stripper as a protagonist. Well, she did say she was a dancer. I don't know if she took her clothes off. Maybe she was just a provocative dancer. Maybe she didn't take any clothes off. I don't know. This was back in the 60s, so were strip clubs that still the way they are today? I mean, were they a little more tasteful back then, or I don't know. I mean, I really haven't had much experience in strip clubs, personally in my life. So I think I've only been to a strip club once in my life, and it was for my 21st birthday, and what a time that was. So, Empire Jeff says, probably not a good episode to watch if you're about to go on a plane. Yeah, I actually have a story where I did go on an airplane one time, and I watched a movie with Jeff Bridges in it. I'm trying to look up the name of it now, where Fearless, 1993, it came out back 31 years ago. And Jeff Bridges is somebody who survived a plane crash that killed, I think, just about everybody other than himself. And suddenly he just didn't have any fear of dying. He felt immortal, as if nothing could touch him. But I watched it that night, and I was getting on a plane the next day, and I was just like, oh man, I gotta watch something better. So I ended up watching The Great Outdoors with John Candy and Dan Aykroyd before I went to bed with bad dreams. But luckily, nothing happened to my plane. I ended up landing safely, and now I'm here doing the channel with y'all. But anyways, that was the last comment for last week's episode 22. Thanks for commenting, and let's jump into the episode and see what we got cooking.
The Twilight Zone.
Oh, we're flying. I kind of knew that from last week's episode because Rod Serling came back and says, watch out for next week's episode. We'll be flying. Well, he didn't say it like that, but something along those lines.
Global 33, receiving okay.
Roger, watch your Victor.
Hey, Magellan, how about a flight progress report?
Coming up, Skipper. Global 33, receiving okay.
Captain Gander wants to know if you intend an altitude change after we pass 30 west.
Advise Gander negative.
Captain Gander. What a name. Take a Gander.
Gentlemen, you'll be pleased to know that thanks to the quality of this aircraft and flying, we'll hit Idlewild on schedule.
Oh, how are we doing back there, Jenny?
All you passengers are highly content. I would like to respectfully request that we get to New York as soon as possible.
Oh, hold on a minute. You feel anything?
No. Slight draft. I'm not wearing pants.
Sensation of speed.
You suppose we picked up a tailwind?
Yeah, maybe those jet streams are tricky.
I don't know.
Crazy feeling I can't shake. You can't feel a tailwind, but I feel something. Magellan, try and get me a ground speed check with the Doppler.
Is that his actual name? Magellan? I thought it was, maybe, I don't know. We all knew who Magellan was, right? He's the one that charted the East Indies. I think he did a lot of the trading in the East Indies. But if you don't know, he's the first to circumnavigate the Earth in history.
We're not only sure, but we're still accelerating. 980 now. 1120.
Global 33 to Weathership Charlie.
2100.
I hope the wings stay on. It's the true airspeed that counts ground speed. Oh, we just hit one Lulu of a jet stream.
One Lulu? Does that mean crazy?
We must be doing 3,000 knots.
Whoa, that's booking.
Harmon Control, this is Global 33. Harmon, do you read us?
No.
Moncton.
This one's a good one, just because what's going to happen?
Boston Control, this is Global 33. Boston, please acknowledge. Idlewild, this is Global 33.
I don't think anyone's reading here, bro.
It's no soap. Can't raise anyone.
Well, this sucks.
You're riding on a jet airliner en route from London to New York. But what you've seen occur inside the cockpit of this plane is no reflection on the aircraft. Problem is simply that the plane is going too fast. Unbeknownst to passenger and crew, this aeroplane is heading into an uncharted region, well off the beaten track.
Aeroplane.
It's moving into the Twilight Zone, the Odyssey of Flight 33.
Well, at least it didn't blow up like last week's plane. So,
I only hope that the Valhalla you're talking about is at the Metropolitan Opera House in little old New York.
Instead of?
death?
We're in trouble.
How bad?
They don't know yet.
Pretty darn.
Go ahead, serve it.
Oh, thanks for making me feel this way before I go serve my crap.
With a smile.
You've got a deal.
We're not gonna die. Ain't nothing bad gonna happen on this flight, no siree.
Had one of the worst livers in the medical history of the state. That woman, when she passed on, would you believe it, there were 5 medical associations who were bidding just to get her liver in a bottle on display. And it was like I said to my late husband, you can't... What did you say you were, dear?
A group captain, madam.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? You know, I had a nephew in the Navy, and he was on a cruiser or a...
He's just like, oh my God, please crash.
Like my late husband always used to say, I've got a stomach that's just like...
It's a big window.
It's very odd indeed. I had the strangest sensation of speed.
See, when I'm on an airplane, I usually watch everybody, watch the stewardesses, and if they have smiles on their face in the back cabin as they're talking, I usually have no issues. But if I see any, like, oh no, I'd be like, oh, should probably get off this plane.
I might as well try to pull our way through and see if anything...
Whoa, turbulence. They go so fast during, like, World War II, and things have blown up around them.
They look okay.
Ditto 1 and 2, everything seems to be in a piece. Priscilla, go after and check for cabin damage. Report back right away.
Is everything okay back here? Yeah, this one, not sure where it's going.
What was that shaking? Turbulence?
I doubt it. It was more like a...
Like a what?
Explosion?
Maybe we hit Mach 1? We broke the sound barrier?
I mean, if you're going 3,000 knots, if it was 3,000 knots, 1 knot equals 1.15 miles per hour. So, and the sound barrier speed is 767 miles per hour. So they're going like Mach 3 or 4. I mean, they didn't have Google back then, so they couldn't double check their accuracy.
Captain, I can't reach Gander, Moncton, or Boston, or anybody. Either they're off the air, or we are, or both.
I'll need a heading to Idlewild from our last known position.
We leave this altitude, we'll run smack dab in the middle of 20 other flights.
Sooner or later, we're gonna have to find a landmark and go VFR. Without radio contact, we're deaf and dumb. As long as we stay up here, we're also blind.
There's no damage asked.
So what are you going to do?
Ours not the reason why. The Valet of Public Relations. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Farber. I just want to assure you that everything is under control. There's been no damage to the aircraft. I repeat, there's no cause for alarm, and I'll keep you posted.
I'm just surprised how big the windows are. They're huge. Last flight I was on, I was like looking through a porthole.
1,435 pounds.
Feel that strange sensation of speed anymore. Joan, how about that heading?
Is it over?
Part of this is scientific, skipper. Part of it's Kentucky windage. Pride 262. That's as close as I can get.
262?
We don't know where we are. We're not even sure if we're on airways. This beast gulps fuel. We all know that only too well. We go down through this overcast and try to find something that looks familiar. It's very possible that we might hit something on the way down. Well, I just wanted to know where we stand, so everybody keep a sharp lookout for any other traffic, and your fingers crossed. Guess a few prayers wouldn't be out of order either.
Fingers crossed.
All right, Craig, let's go down.
Things are looking okay.
Skipper?
Pretty decent effects for back then, going through the clouds, you know?
I don't know where they are, but that's New York City, all right. Just one little item seems to be amiss.
Oh, we're over land. I don't see any...
Are we?
Any what, Janie?
There is nothing out the window.
We don't either. There's the Hudson River, that's Staten Island. Got all the topographical clues we need. Problem seems to be the real estate's there. It's just the city and 8 million people that missing.
Skipper, verify something.
So,
Look!
did the plane go back in time?
It's not possible.
What are we looking at?
Thing, Hawley, is going on.
Oh, we have gone back in time. Brontosaurus is like, what is that? Where are we going to land this puppy? What do you tell the passengers? Hey guys, I don't know what the hell to tell you.
Well, what do you think, Skipper?
I think we're screwed.
I'll give you a surmise, gentlemen. You may want to truss me up with ropes, but it's the only single explanation I can give.
Somehow we went back in time.
We not only went through the sound barrier, but we've gone back in time.
Well, what do we do about it?
They must have went 8,888 miles per hour.
We're gonna climb till we get back into that jet stream, and then we're gonna try to go back where we came from. Let's do it.
Sounds like an okay idea to me.
700 knots. 780. 900 knots. Skipper, I think we're gonna make it.
Yeah, we're getting faster.
Picking it up again, you feel it? We're picking it up again.
Oh, did they just do it again? They go back in time or back to the future?
I've got 3 passengers back there that are nearly hysterical. And those 2 kids back in the tourist section have half the passengers climbing the walls.
Probably the only one that saw a brontosaurus out the window. It's always the kids that see it. The adults are like, what? You're a liar. You don't know what you're talking about. Shut up.
Look, we're back!
Are we? Yep, we're back. It'd be interesting if they landed as like 1980-something instead. Oh, crap.
We encountered some momentary difficulty back there, but as you can see, we're over New York City now and should be landing inside of just a few minutes.
Nothing doing, Captain. Our VHF is still out.
Maybe this is out too. Try using high...
We've still got a good portion of the episode left. There's got to be something else that's going to happen.
LaGuardia, this is Global 33.
LaGuardia Tower. Who is calling, please?
LaGuardia, this is Global 33. Our VOR and ILS appear inoperative. Request radar vector to Idlewild ILS.
West. What? What flight did you say this was?
What's this mean? Something's off.
Now stop fooling around, we're short on fuel.
What kind of aircraft is this?
This is a jet aircraft.
Uh-oh. It must be like 1930-something.
4 big, lovely turbines, and they're getting hungry, running short on fuel.
They didn't have airports back then, did they? I mean, I don't know. Yeah, 30s they had airports, but...
I don't know who you are, and we don't know anything at all about radar or jets or anything else.
Captain, no longer this runway is less than 5,000 feet. You think we ought to take a chance?
You're cleared to land on runway 22. Captain is to report to the CAA office immediately.
Yeah, it opened in 1939, 84 years ago. So this has got to be like the 1940s? I mean, that's when radar was very... Like 1940. I want to say 1941 it was being deployed in Pearl Harbor. I do remember they had a thing about radar being able to see back then, but it just wasn't that great. So I'm kind of curious what year this is.
Exactly what it is. It's a New York World's Fair.
New York World's Fair, but that means we'd be back in
1939.
39. I was about right. It's when LaGuardia opened. Nice. Glad I looked it up.
Can't land in LaGuardia. Can't land in 1939.
Gonna go one more time? Maybe go a little too far ahead.
Gotta try again.
Well, what about the passengers?
We're just gonna have to take it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. What I'm about to tell you.
May surprise the hell out of you.
If you look out on the left-hand side of this aircraft, you'll see directly below Lake Success. Those buildings aren't the United Nations. They happen to be the World's Fair.
Okay.
In some manner, this aircraft has gone back into time, and it's 1939.
Well, that's not...
All I ask of you is that you remain calm and pray.
But now reported overdue and missing, and by now searched for on land, sea, and air by anguished human beings, fearful of what they'll find. You hear the sound of jet engines flying atop the overcast. Shoot up a flare or do something. That would be Global 33 trying to get home from the Twilight Zone.
So they're just lost to the Twilight Zone? There is no getting home? They don't even give you an ending? Oh my god. Well, that was the Odyssey of Flight 33, and I gotta say, what? You know, the ending. I couldn't believe that just ended it right there with them having no way home. It's almost like Quantum Leap in a way. If you're not seeing Quantum Leap, I just ruined it for you. If you haven't seen the original one with Scott Bakula, where he didn't make it home in the end. They kind of just left it where it's like he's stuck forever going through time, never being able to go back home. And the passengers, and I think this is the first time where multiple people, other than last week's episode, which an entire plane full of people basically exploded. But in this one, we got to know the passengers, we got to know the flight crew, and the stewardesses or the flight. But in this one, we got to know the flight crew, we got to know the passengers, so it was just kind of like, what? You couldn't give me some kind of ending? Maybe some kind of sequel to this episode? I would definitely love to see a sequel to this, maybe at some point in the future. I don't know if they actually did it, but it would be interesting to see, like, maybe in another Twilight Zone, the 80s or the early 2000s version of this series, and have like a continuation of Flight 33 and how they're still flying around going, we can't make it home, but I'm not sure if they did that or not. There's still a lot of episodes left to go forward, but more than likely they probably just ended it and that's it. There's not going to be any more continuation of Flight 33. But I really enjoyed the episode. At first I was just like, man, this is a very simplistic episode with them just going back 65 million years, seeing a brontosaurus, and then all of a sudden they jump back towards their present day. But it turns out they didn't go back to present day. It's in 1939, and they're still screwed by the end of this episode. Enjoyed the episode. Very curious. This actually might end up in my top 5. That's like 2 episodes in a row that I might have to consider being in my top 5 for this season. So look out for that when I do my end of the season podcast for season 2. But let's see what it took to get this episode off the ground by reading a little bit of the trivia. The authentic cockpit dialogue was written by Robert J. Serling, the elder brother of Rod Serling. Robert was an airline pilot and aviation writer for United Press International. He is listed in the credits as consultant. The dinosaur sequence was credited to Jack H. Harris and used a brontosaurus model taken from Dinosaurs, 1960. The expense of the 2 brief shots ran $2,500, making it the most expensive footage in the original Twilight Zone. The captain mentions Idlewild as their destination, and the plane is destined for New York, according to the narrator. Idlewild was renamed JFK after the president was assassinated in 1963. Stephen King lifted elements of the plot of the Odyssey of Flight 33 for his novella The Langoliers, first published in September 1990. The Langoliers concerned a group of airplane passengers that are left in the past, where they must find a way back to the present or face the terror of the tidal creatures, who literally eat past time in space. A character in the story recalls the plot of the Odyssey of Flight 33 during the course of the action. I was actually thinking of the Langoliers when they were coming down, descending through the clouds, and when they were looking out the window, they weren't saying what was outside the window, so I all of a sudden went towards the Langoliers, which I actually watched the miniseries back in the 80s. I wasn't alive in the 80s, but I think it came out like in the late 80s, early 90s, and I watched the rerun of it later on. But it consisted of these passengers like looking out the window, and suddenly there's nothing. And I thought that's what they were going to see, nothing. Instead, they ended up seeing a brontosaurus, but it's funny that did pop up in my head, but when they ended up seeing the brontosaurus, I went, oh, okay. But it's weird that they actually pulled some of the stuff from this episode. In the exterior shots of the aircraft, the name of the airline is not apparent, though it is described as a global flight. On close examination, one can observe that the aircraft is faintly labeled Boeing 707. One of the rare Twilight Zone episodes that does not have a conclusive ending or any sort of plot resolution. Yeah, that's exactly what I pointed out right at the very end. It's like, really? They're just going to leave it to where, okay, maybe they did find their way home, maybe they didn't. It kind of just leaves you with your own interpretation of what the ending could be. Or maybe they just had to finally land because they were running low on fuel. The aerial view of the 1939 World's Fair is actual stock footage shot from an airplane circling above the fair, specifically the Trilon and the Perisphere. Captain Farver says there is not to reason why into the Valley of Public Relations. There's not to reason why is a line from Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem, The Charge of the Light Brigade, followed by the ominous line, there's but to do and die. The poem itself is about soldiers charging into battle knowing they're going to die. Into the Valley of Public Relations is a reference to the biblical Valley of the Shadow of Death, and is also a play on a line from Tennyson's poem, Into the Valley of Death Road the 600. This episode takes place in 1961, millions of years in the past, and in 1939. The previous episode is entitled 22. The main character is about to board Flight 22. These characters end up 22 years in the past and are told to land on runway 22 by traffic control. This episode has Flight 33 in the title. Well, that's it for this episode. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue on this voyage to episode 156 of The Twilight Zone. And until next time, see you later.